Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here, and as you can tell, we're playing Japan as part of Hearts of Iron 4, Black Ice. Well, let's continue this. See how we can continue our bogged downness in China. I have not played a China game like this before. Let's see if we can get across this river. If we can do that, that would shorten our front line a little bit. That may be a little harder to hold, but it would shorten our front line. Yeah, how do you deal with the guilt of knowing that, I mean, I would say 80+% of the Germans alive today, I mean, that's just a guess, but that would be sort of my number of Germans alive today that had ancestors that supported the Nazi regime. You know, that were soldiers. I mean, just basic soldiers that supporting the regime. There were millions of SA men, lots and lots of women in the various female organizations that supported the Nazi regime, and you know, and that's got to really sort of you know, even if you take out the Holocaust, the millions of people that died in World War II, you know, because like I'm fully in understanding and sympathy for the battle against Bolshevism, you know, but there's still a lot of other stuff going on. You know, why invade Norway? Why cause all that problems? Why invade the Netherlands? Just unnecessary stuff. Okay, you turn right around and go back and see if you can hold that province. No, ads. It wasn't necessary. It was a choice. You know, the whole going into Poland was a choice. Oh, there's very much about wanting to go after Sweden, or I mean, just reading as posts, go after Norway because of uniting the Aryan people as they saw it. Yes, he would have eventually gone after Sweden too for racial reasons. France bans communism. Turn around, march back. Now you guys come across the river there with their support. No, you guys with their support. There we go. I'll hit into that with just that division's support, because we're going to take the other divisions and they're going to support that attack. Yeah, you're probably right. He didn't have the manpower to garrison at the time, but it just, in my opinion, it's a eventuality. You know, once Britain's defeated, once the Soviets are defeated, then yes, I think Hitler would have gone after Sweden. I don't, you know, Hitler was fighting many wars of aggression. I don't really think there's any other way to really look at it. And the German people, you know, it's got to be really telling on them, on how they view things. Where World War I, for Germany specifically, but I would say the Central Power, is a very different thing. You have, I still completely blame Serbia for, you know, their Secret Service gave the Black Hand operatives the Browning pistols to go shoot the heir apparent to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You know, sort of like taking out the vice president. That's an act of war, okay? So, you know, now, yeah, we can talk about that the Austrian occupation of parts of Serbia and other stuff was really, really nasty, what we would call, in modern-day sense, war crimes. I'm not trying to sugarcoat what the Central Powers did, as well as what Germany did, particularly in Belgium. A lot of nasty stuff going on there. I'm not sugarcoating that. But Austro-Hungary had very legitimate reasons to go after Serbia. Russia decides to stick up for Serbia. Russia's aligned with France. And Germany didn't have a good plan for just fighting a defensive war in the west and an offensive war in the east. So they're sort of stuck, and they go through Belgium. They intended to go through, my understanding. Yeah, everyone blames Serbia. So, you know, so World War I, yes, it caused millions of people to be killed, but I don't look at it as, at its core, this act of aggression by the Central Powers. I'm sure, because there's already been pressure by Austro-Hungary against Serbia and against that region to bring it into the empire. I'm sure there's passive-aggressive action already going on. There's some German ultra-nationalists that want to expand their borders, you know, the prequel to the Nazis. The Nazis didn't just spring up as a post-World War I phenomenon. If you look at them and their roots, it goes back before World War I. So there's some there's some of that going on, most assuredly, but it's a different sort of situation. Where World War II, going after, you know, how on earth can you legitimately justify going after Czechoslovakia after you get the Sudetenland? You just, in my opinion, you can't. Unless you're planning, oh well, we're going for world conquest and they're a thorn in our side. Okay, yeah. But if you're just going after quote unquote sort of legitimate national targets, then no, you don't justify that, in my opinion. That's my opinion. And so there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of problems, but they also, a lot of people in Germany, I think, are proud of their ancestors who fought in the war, as they see it, for their national self-interest. You know, not wanting to support the Nazis, but you know, just because, hey, there's a war, so they fought well. So I get that there's mixed feelings, you know. It's just like, you know, look at all of those soldiers who fought for Stalin. Stalin kills in sort of internal actions between the Holodomor in the Ukraine to the Gulag system, more people than Hitler kills internally. I'm not talking about died in the war. I'm talking about just dying sort of internally. Stalin kills more. So all of those soldiers who fought for Stalin, including the ones that fought against the German invasion, fought to support the atrocities. Now, of course, had Hitler won, it would have been worse than Stalin, you know, for the Russian people. So I understand why. I mean, I unfortunately don't see him as much around here as used to Mikhail, who I know is a vehement anti-Nazi or anti-communist. But he's also, I think, very proud of, including, I think, some of his ancestors who fought in the Great Patriotic War to defeat the Germans. You know, so there's this sort of, you know, mixed feelings there, I think. And so, you know, I get it. I don't, because I am, through my ancestry, I don't have these mixed conflicts. So I don't necessarily know how it feels. Yeah, you're right about... yeah, they had a lot of arms industry, but it is sort of right in the center of what Hitler saw as Germany, so wanted that. Yes, and you're absolutely right there, Django. You know, and that's you know, that's that, and of course somebody showing up with some guns and whatever, and saying you're drafted in the army. You know, I get that, and I get people were drafted into the army before Hitler invades, and you know, so I get the idea of why people fought for Stalin, but still you have ancestors now, because obviously. Well, Stalin hangs around a bit longer, but the World War II generation is passing. Where I've known a bunch of World War II generations. A few of my relatives fought in it. None of my direct ancestors, because my two grandfathers that were alive, one had only 9 fingers by the start of World War II, and so he wasn't qualified to go into any of the armed services with just 9 fingers. And the other one was a bit older, just a little too young to go into World War I, a little too sort of old to go into World War II. So didn't make, neither of my grandfathers made it into World War II. But one of my grandfather's brothers was in the Marine Corps in World War II. So I've had family fighting in World War II. Well, you know, and you're right, Tippett, about Australia doing bad things with the Aborigines. But there's hold on, everybody. This is important. I want to find this here. Okay. There are 3 questions that will destroy most of the arguments on the left. One is compared to what? Two is at what cost? Three, what hard evidence do you have? Okay, let's look at what the British / Australians did to the Aborigines, which was pretty bad. I'm not going to say it's good or fine, but compared to what? Compared to what the Belgians did in the Congo? Compared to what, compared to other people's occupations of other territories. I don't want to just pick on World War II, and we can look at, it's, you can look well before it. You can look at various colonial type movements, and by that I mean the Ottomans moving into Asia Minor. That's a colonial move, that they were Osman's Turks, because it was Osman, a person, got his Turkic tribes, sort of moved in over on top of the Seljuk Turks, and then pushed further into Asia Minor, and then eventually into Europe and everywhere else. Or you can look at, I don't know if quite you would go to genocide, but you could look at the Arab conquest of North Africa, where the Berbers and a bunch of other peoples that still sort of exist in limited numbers in sort of out-of-the-way places in North Africa, but it's mostly now Arabic. So they've slaughtered huge populations. Yeah, and I understand, and this, like what Tirpitz's saying, or Tippett, sorry, no R in there, how bad the Americans treated the Indians. And yeah, I know ads is here, but the American Indians. And that's all, because Columbus thought he had found India, because the people sort of look like what he heard descriptions that the Indians look like, but it's what they were called then, and what I know them as. The Native Americans, the American Indians. Bad things happened. But you look at what the savages did going way back and fighting women and children and doing things like that, so I've got to look at, there is significant blame to be had with the Indians. That doesn't excuse the bad things that the Americans did, but it puts it into context. Well, yes, I would say the ads is, I think, looking at it purely as how effective it is to killing off the local population. At least that's how I'm taking his statements. So yeah, it's... And so, that's why I don't feel bad or guilty about the wars against the Native Americans in America. The Indians. There was bad stuff going on compared to what else was going on in the world. It's just more of the same. And, that's how I look at it. And I know the younger generation here in America disagrees with me. Oh well. Okay, let's continue this. So, compared to what? Okay, inner war torpedoes, very good. So we have submarine torpedoes. Looking for... The do-gooding of the 19th century, I think, is what you're talking about there, ads. That's where it sort of starts. As you know, I'm a huge proponent of the West. I really believe in the West as the best. Not that it should be the only, not that the West can't or shouldn't or won't learn from other cultures and people, but I'm a big advocate for the West, and I think we're slowly learning our lessons there. Well, I would also put a lot of the European, that whole Spanish thing in Latin America was a religious conquest. Trust me, the Catholic Church, the Inquisition, was imported to Latin America. You have a lot of the justifications in Africa and other places on religious grounds as well, you know, trying to Christianize. I would say mostly in India, the Christianization, if you will, of India was, and ads may have better information than I do, presumably he does, but was mostly on a voluntary basis. It wasn't a, it wasn't, trying to convert mass numbers of natives by force, as it were. Oh yes, no, the Arabs are still into slavery. I don't think they've ever renounced the idea. Okay, yeah, Ngoa and Dewey, and what was the other little tidbit of thing? Yeah, you had that. You're right, but that's just, Yes, Aaron Hirsi Ali, I know who you're talking about. She's I believe, Somali in ethnicity, formerly a, let's move you back to the front, we'll move you up here. Former a Muslim, now an anti-Muslim, because of her experience, life experience, so I understand that.